My name is Andrea, I'm 35 years old, and I live alone in a small house in the suburbs of Colorado Springs. I work as a manager for an interior design firm, a busy but stable job that lets me maintain a peaceful and independent life. I'm not someone who trusts easily, but when it comes to family, I've always tried to hold on to what little connection remained. A few months ago, my younger sister, Melissa, 29, called me in the middle of the night. Her voice was weak, trembling like she had just finished crying. She said she'd been laid off when her company suddenly shut down, and soon after she was diagnosed with the West Nile virus. My heart sank. We were never that close, but I couldn't ignore what she was going through. Our parents had retired and moved to Florida years ago, and they were no longer in a position to care for her. Her friends, if she had any, lived far away or were struggling with their own lives. After a few phone calls with our parents, I decided to let Melissa move in with me, at least until she recovered and figured out her next steps. When she arrived, she looked so frail I almost didn't recognize her. Her skin was dull, her eyes shadowed, and she moved as if even the slightest breeze could knock her over. I rearranged the living room and cleaned up the spare bedroom so she could rest. Every day, I cooked for her, picked up her medication, and drove her to her checkups. I even arranged to work from home more often so I could be there for her. I didn't complain. It was what a big sister should do. "Thank you for doing all this," Melissa said one evening, eyes red as I set a tray of food on the bedside table. "I know how busy you are. I don't even know how to say thank you." I smiled, masking the exhaustion in my eyes. "Family helps each other. You don't need to thank me." At the time, I truly believed I was doing the right thing. I'd always been a little rigid, someone who believed that doing good would bring good in return. I never imagined that kindness would turn into the biggest trap of my life. Melissa stayed with me for almost 2 months. Her health slowly improved. She could walk around, cook simple meals, even laugh once in a while. I thought things were getting better. But sometimes something felt off. The way she looked around the house, or the way she asked about certain things I owned, like she was calculating their worth. "This house must have cost a lot, huh?" she asked casually one morning while I made coffee. I just laughed, assuming she was making small talk. "It's decent, but I worked hard for it. I still have to make monthly payments." I didn't notice her expression then. A quick look, part envy, part calculation. I saw it but brushed it off. Because she was my sister, the one I had taken in, the one I'd sat up with on sleepless nights as she burned with fever. I never could have imagined that the house I opened to her would become the place where everything in me began to unravel. That the worst days of my life would begin the moment I believed that family would never hurt you. 3 months after Melissa moved in, a seemingly normal Friday afternoon became the moment that buried every ounce of trust I had. I had just gotten home from work, still in my office clothes, when I found Melissa waiting for me in the living room. Her makeup was light but noticeable, her hair neatly tied back, and she was wearing the floral dress I had once lent her, as if something special was about to happen. Beside her, my husband Ethan sat on the couch, pale as a ghost, looking like he'd just received terrifying news. The whole scene sent a chill through me. "What's going on?" I asked, my heartbeat quickening. Melissa glanced at Ethan, then turned to me with a theatrical expression. "You should probably sit down." I didn't. Something in my gut told me I'd need all the strength I had to stay upright for what was coming. "There's something important I need to say," she began, her voice trembling. "On purpose. I'm pregnant." I blinked. Took a second to register. "Pregnant? Whose baby?" She turned to Ethan. I followed her gaze and saw that he wasn't avoiding eye contact anymore. He just bowed his head and sighed. It's his silence. Nothing but the ticking of the wall clock. I stood there frozen, my heart stopping. Every word Melissa spoke stabbed into me like a needle. I had cared for her, fed her, trusted my husband completely, and here they were, betraying me, together. Under my roof. "You can be angry, I get it," Melissa said. "But the truth is, What's done is done. And now I'm carrying this child. I can't live here feeling like a criminal. I think you should move out, so Ethan and I can start our new family. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the audacity of it all shattered logic. Come again? I asked coldly. You want me to leave my own house so you and my husband can start a family? I just thought, she faltered. You'd understand. We're family. This baby, it's your niece or nephew. Don't call me your sister. I cut her off, my voice ice. That baby is the result of betrayal, while you were living off my food, my medicine, under my roof. Ethan said nothing. I turned to him. You have nothing to say? I didn't know Melissa would tell you like this. So you knew, I pressed. It only happened a few times. I thought we could keep it hidden. Hidden? I let out a dry laugh. You thought you could live a double life in this house and I'd never find out? I didn't cry. I had no tears left when trust had already been burned to ash. I walked upstairs, grabbed a small bag, my house deed, and my bank cards. Then I came back down and placed them all on the table. I'm not going anywhere, I said, looking Melissa dead in the eye. This house is in my name. Every brick, every chair, paid for by me. If anyone's uncomfortable here, they can leave. Melissa looked at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. But I'm pregnant. Don't use that baby to shield your greed, I said. If you had the nerve to sleep with my husband, you should have the nerve to find your own place. Ethan stayed silent, his gaze on the floor, defeated. I didn't have to shout or break things. My silence was louder than any scream. I would never forgive them. At that moment, I knew. A door had closed forever. And the saddest part? The one who shut it was the person who once called me sister. Melissa stood frozen, her face drained of color. Ethan sat there like he was awaiting a verdict. I crossed my arms, holding myself steady even as my heart pounded. But my voice? It didn't waver. It was sharp, precise. I'll be filing for divorce on Monday, I said, eyes fixed on Ethan. You can pack your things tonight, and Melissa? I turned to her. You're no longer welcome here. You can't do this, Melissa stammered. I have nowhere else to go. I'm pregnant. Are you really going to kick me out onto the street? I let out a cold laugh. That's funny. When you were trying to steal my husband and kick me out of my own home, did that cross your mind? Ethan looked up slightly, his eyes dazed. Andrea, I know I messed up. I know there's no excuse. But you have to understand, what happened between me and Melissa didn't start as a plan. It just spiraled. Spiraled? I repeated, nearly laughing. You're talking about betrayal, not slipping in the shower. I walked straight to the small safe in the corner of the room and pulled out the house documents, every single one in my name, because I bought the house before we got married. I laid them out on the table one by one, as if spelling out a truth they could no longer deny. Melissa, I said slowly, you thought this house belonged to both me and Ethan, didn't you? She nodded, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. That's unfortunate. You should have checked before trying to take something that was never yours. Ethan doesn't own a thing here. No title, no stake, not even a savings account. I turned to Ethan and saw the shame and desperation all over his face. Melissa looked like she'd been hit with a bucket of ice water. She turned to him, eyes wide. You told me. You were managing the finances, that everything here was in your name. Ethan exhaled. I said that because I felt pathetic. What did you think I was? A successful author? I've been stuck on the same draft for 3 years. Everything you've seen here, it's all Andrea's. Melissa stepped back like she'd just been stabbed. Only this time, by the very person she thought she could trust. You lied to me. And you betrayed me. I stepped forward, just enough so they could both hear me clearly. Fair trade? I left them there, standing in their shame. Then I said what I had been thinking ever since I found out. You both need to pack your things and be out of this house within an hour. If not, I'll call the police. Ethan nodded silently and stumbled upstairs to start packing. Melissa stayed frozen in place, her eyes shifting from rage to panic before she suddenly collapsed to the floor, sobbing. Andrea, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought... You thought what? That you could destroy someone's marriage and slide into their place like nothing happened? I looked down at my sister, hunched on the floor. I don't need your apology. I need you gone. I turned away, not allowing myself to soften. Sisterhood, once stretched past its breaking point, can't be saved. An hour later, they were gone. Ethan said nothing. Melissa was still crying, but this time in silence, probably because she knew every last card in her hand had been laid bare. I shut the door behind them. For the first time in weeks, the house fell into a strange kind of quiet. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the door, letting out a silent breath. I had lost a marriage, I had lost family, but I hadn't lost myself. I don't know how long I stood there after the last sound of tires faded from the driveway. It was completely dark. The house sat in eerie stillness. No more Melissa dragging her feet down the hallway. No more clacking keyboard from Ethan pretending to work on his manuscript. Just me, a dry emptiness, and a house as cold as stone. I didn't cry. I wasn't even angry anymore. It just felt like every cell in my body had burned out. I turned on the lights, room by room, opened every window to let in the night air. The air felt thick, like the house had been through a fire. No flames, just wreckage. I started cleaning. Everything tied to Melissa. Pillows, bags, her medication, the clothes she had stuffed in the closet, I gathered it all. No sorting, no second thoughts. I didn't bother folding. I shoved each item into her suitcase like I was erasing her from my life. As for Ethan, unfinished drafts, philosophy books he never read, the bath towel I gave him on our second anniversary, I packed them into a bag and shoved it to the front door. Just as I dragged the last suitcase into the foyer, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. Melissa stood there, eyes red, cheeks streaked with tears. She wore the hoodie I once let her borrow, arms wrapped around her stomach like she was trying to win sympathy. Andrea, please, let me stay just one night. I don't know where to go. I'm sorry, I really am. I looked straight into those eyes, the same eyes that once made me cave when she was little and broke her arm falling off a bike. But this time, they weren't the eyes of a sister in need. They were the eyes of someone who had crushed trust and was now trying to patch it up with cheap tears. No, I said, hand firm on the door. You're not allowed back here. Not tonight, not ever. But I have no one. You had someone. My husband. And you chose to betray me with him. So now, take care of each other. Melissa collapsed onto the cold porch tile, sobbing. I don't know what I was thinking. I messed up. I know I did. I stood still. It's too late, Melissa. Starting today, you're no longer part of my life. I closed the door without another word. The sound of the lock clicking into place felt final. The next morning, I brought the divorce papers to my lawyer's office. Everything had already been prepared. Ethan would have no claim to any assets since everything was in my name and clearly documented. I didn't want to drag it out. I just wanted it over. As I signed the final document, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before hitting silence. I wasn't ready to explain. I wasn't ready for the excuses or the judgment. At 3 p.m., the lawyer called to confirm the divorce papers had been filed. The court would be sending Ethan a summons in the coming days. When I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't happy, but I felt clean. That night, I sat alone on the balcony, poured myself a cup of mint tea, and looked out into the night sky. The cold wind slipped through my hair, rustling the leaves like a soft whisper from the peaceful days. I once thought were gone. I knew the road ahead would be hard. I'd face phone calls, rumors, maybe even resentment from relatives. But I also knew I had done the right thing. I had chosen myself. In the end, if I didn't protect me, who would? Just 3 days after filing for divorce, my phone rang again. This time, I didn't press silence fast enough. My mom's name lit up the screen before I could hang up. I hesitated for a second, then answered, "Hi, Mom." "So you're finally picking up?" Her voice sharp, no greeting. "Andrea, I heard from Melissa that you kicked her out of your house while she's pregnant. Is that true?" I closed my eyes and kept my voice calm. "Yes, I couldn't let her stay after what she did." "You really think that was the right thing to do?" she snapped. "Melissa is pregnant with Ethan's child, has no job, no home. You think this makes you strong? Because to me, it just makes you cruel." I was quiet for a few seconds. "You know she slept with my husband, right? What she did was wrong. I'm not excusing it. But Ethan is older, more experienced, and knew how to manipulate things. I believe if Melissa made a mistake, it's because she was led into it." I could barely believe my ears. Manipulated? Mom, are you talking about a grown woman, almost 30, who was living off her sister, then used the time I was at work to steal my husband? That's what you call manipulated? "You're being too harsh, Andrea," my mom snapped. "Family doesn't act like that. When someone stumbles, we don't throw them out. We reach out and lift them up." "I already reached out, Mom." I took a deep breath. "I let Melissa into my home. I took care of her, every meal, every prescription, and the way she thanked me was with the most blatant betrayal imaginable." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, then my mom's voice softened. "She's still your sister. And that baby? It's blood. It's family. You can't be so heartless." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I was pulled back to childhood, when I was always the one expected to be stronger, to give in to my weaker little sister, even when it was never fair. And now, the same script was playing again. Except this time, the price wasn't a toy or a slice of cake. It was my entire marriage, and my dignity. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, my voice strangely calm, "but this time, I'm not backing down. Not anymore." My mom went silent, like she couldn't believe I'd said that. Then she said one final line, heavy as stone. "You've changed. You're not the daughter I used to know." I ended the call without responding. Maybe she was right. I had changed. But not because I wanted to. They had forced me to, so I wouldn't get trampled again. The next morning, I got a text from my dad, short and to the point. "Your mother's really upset. If you can, think this over. Families shouldn't turn their backs on each other over a mistake." I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy to explain myself to people who only saw one side of the story. They hadn't lived in that house. They didn't come home late at night to find Melissa and Ethan on the couch, laughing at some movie like I didn't exist. They weren't the ones who trusted and got betrayed under their own roof. By the afternoon, I emailed my lawyer and asked them to expedite the divorce. I attached additional documents, statements, and anything else needed. I wanted this to end as soon as possible. No more dragging it out. No more chances for anyone to pull me back into that chaos. That night, just as I turned off the lights and got ready for bed, the doorbell rang again. I peeked through the curtain. It was my mother, standing there in a thin coat, clutching her purse tightly. When she looked up at the window, her expression wasn't angry or sharp like on the phone. It was something else. Something I couldn't name. I didn't open the door, I just stood there, watching quietly, then turned around and walked away. Not because I didn't love her, but because I couldn't keep loving without being protected. A week after the tense call with my mom, I thought things had finally settled down. I went back to work, focused on my unfinished projects, tried to keep my mind from slipping back into the pain my family had caused. But The peace lasted only 3 days. Monday morning, just as I walked into the office, my assistant, Sam, rushed up to me with a concerned face. "Andrea, there's an older woman. She's been sitting in the lobby since 8 a.m., says she's your mother and it's urgent." I sighed, not even trying to hide how tired I was. I didn't want a scene at work, so I nodded and told Sam to bring her to a small meeting room. As soon as the door closed, she pulled an envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. "Ultrasound results. Melissa lost the baby. The doctor said it was due to stress." I said nothing, just stared at the paper, feeling cold inside. "See what you've done," she hissed, her voice shaking with anger. "You pushed your sister to this. Is that how a big sister behaves?" I looked up at her, meeting her eyes. "I didn't make Melissa do anything. She made her own choices. And as for the miscarriage," I took a breath. "I'm sorry it happened, but I'm not responsible for someone else's emotions or decisions." A pregnant woman, kicked out of her home with no one and nowhere to go. Do you really think that wouldn't affect her mentally? And you still think you're right? Each word hit like a slap. Not because I felt guilty, but because it hit me. My family never truly stood with me. "Then why didn't you take Melissa in, Mom? Or any of the relatives who care so much? Everyone's quick to defend her, right?" She didn't answer. I went on, my voice no longer soft. "Because all of you are quick to judge, but when it's time to actually help, nobody steps up. Don't guilt me into carrying consequences for mistakes that weren't mine." My mom stood up abruptly, her eyes red with rage. "You've become so cold, Andrea. You have no heart left." "No, Mom," I replied firmly. "I'm just learning how to protect my heart, after it was shattered by the people I loved the most." She said nothing more. She just left the ultrasound paper on the table and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her, softly, but with the weight of a boulder. That afternoon, I got a message from a relative, Aunt Evelyn, my mom's cousin, someone I rarely saw. "Andrea, I don't want to interfere, but everyone in the family is talking. They all say you've gone too far. Melissa's heartbroken. Please reconsider." I held the phone, feeling numb. Everyone in the family. None of them were here. None of them saw it. Yet they had no problem deciding who was right and wrong, like they were reading some cheap novel. I replied with just one sentence. "If everyone cares so much about Melissa, why hasn't anyone offered her a place to stay?" No one responded. That night, I got another call, this time from Jenna, my best friend from college. Her voice was tentative. "What's going on? I heard from some of your relatives. They said you kicked Melissa out while she was pregnant, and now—" I cut her off. Melissa betrayed me. In my own house. With my own husband. Silence on the other end. She destroyed everything. "I'm just the one cleaning up the mess," I added. "And I'm not obligated to play background for someone else to live a life they don't deserve." Jenna let out a slow breath. "I get it. I'm sorry for asking." "It's okay," I said gently. "I just don't want anyone else telling my story wrong anymore." Eventually, I wrote a long letter, not to send to anyone, just to keep for myself. In it, I laid everything out from beginning to end, no sugarcoating, no edits. I wanted to record the truth. Not to justify anything, but to remind myself, sometimes holding your boundaries is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. And when I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, I knew one thing more clearly than ever. I didn't need the whole world to understand me. I just needed to stop betraying myself. 3 weeks after filing for divorce, I got an unexpected message from Ethan. He didn't call. Didn't say much, just one line. "I need to tell you something. It's important." I was about to delete it, but something inside me hesitated. I didn't feel anything for him anymore. The anger had long given way to indifference. But I still wanted to know. Not because I cared, but because I needed full closure. I replied simply, "Say it." Less than a minute later, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I picked up, keeping my tone calm, like I was answering a work call. "I'm not calling to apologize or make excuses," he said right away. "I just need you to know the truth. Melissa was never pregnant." I sat up straight. "What did you say?" "I suspected it from the start." His voice sounded drained. "She said she was pregnant, but wouldn't let me go with her to the doctor. I asked multiple times, offered to take her to an ultrasound, even gave her the number of a local clinic. But she always avoided it. I stayed quiet. In my head, all the broken pieces began shifting into place. She just kept saying the doctor told her to rest, not to move around much," Ethan continued. "Then, when you got the ultrasound paper, it came from your mom, not Melissa. I never saw the original. She said she lost it." "So the miscarriage was fake too?" I asked, my voice low. I asked her. She didn't answer, just cried. But there were no documents, no records. No doctor ever confirmed anything. She just, one day, said she lost the baby. I leaned back in my chair. My heart didn't ache. It clenched in a different way, a deeper kind of hurt. The feeling of being deceived to the core by your own family. "I called because I heard your family's blaming you, saying you caused Melissa to miscarry." "I couldn't let you carry that," Ethan said, hesitating. "I know it's late, but the truth still deserves to be told." I didn't respond right away. My mind raced with questions. When did Melissa come up with this fake pregnancy? What was her plan? To trap Ethan? Push me out of the house? Or just earn pity? Forgiveness? Whatever her motive, one thing was now clear. She had never been pregnant. "Thanks for telling the truth," I said. Short, but honest. Before hanging up, Ethan added, "I know I don't deserve to say this, but I hope you find peace. And, if you can, let it all go, Andrea. Don't let what happened between me and her stain the rest of your life." I didn't reply. I just hung up, then sat still for a long time, staring out the window. The next day, I printed the text exchange and wrote down everything Ethan said. Not to share with anyone, just to keep. As proof to myself that I wasn't crazy, or cold, or cruel, like my family had claimed. That afternoon, I called my mother. This time, I was the one to reach out. "Do you have a minute?" I asked. "What's this about?" Her voice was cold, guarded. "I just wanted to inform you of something," I said slowly. "Melissa was never pregnant." There was no response. I heard the sound of her swallowing hard. It was Ethan who confirmed it. He said he asked her many times, but she always dodged the questions. There were no documents, no doctors who ever confirmed anything. She faked it, to stay, to be forgiven, to have someone take her side. "Do you have any proof?" my mom asked, her voice smaller. "I don't need proof, Mom," I said calmly. "I'm done proving anything to anyone. I only called to let you know. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. But if you're going to keep blaming me for a pregnancy that never existed, then this conversation can end right here." Mom was silent for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice almost trembling. "Andrea, I didn't know. I really didn't know." "I know," I said softly, "and that's why I don't resent you. But I'll never forget how everyone turned their back on me. For a lie wrapped in tears." I hung up after that. And for the first time since everything happened, I felt completely at peace. Nothing left to prove. No one left to please. I had stepped out of their shadow, and this time, on my own 2 feet. One morning in early June, I received an email confirmation from the court. The divorce had been finalized. The entire process wrapped up faster than expected, since Ethan didn't contest anything. No disputes, no conditions. We were now officially strangers on paper. And that brought me a kind of relief I couldn't even describe. I printed the court order, filed it neatly with my personal records, then picked up my phone and opened my contact list. Mom? Blocked. Dad? Blocked. Melissa? Blocked. Every missed call, every unread message, every bitter accusation, I left it all behind. Not out of hatred, but because I finally understood. Forgiveness doesn't mean keeping people in your life. That evening, I treated myself to a warm dinner. No one across the table, but for the first time in months, I felt peace. I turned on my old playlist, picked a soft jazz track, poured a glass of red wine, and sat by the window, watching the evening light fall over the backyard. This house had once been a home, then a place of betrayal, arguments, and tears. But now, I was choosing to make it mine again. Completely. I started with small changes, replaced the curtains, moved the sofa, took down the old wedding photo, and hung an empty frame instead, as a reminder that every new chapter begins with blank space. I changed the bedding, painted the living room in a soft sage green, and ordered a few indoor plants. Life slowly found its rhythm again, like every breath I took was part of the healing. Every morning, I made coffee just for myself, not for two. Every night, I read a few pages of a book, no longer interrupted by loud TV shows in the living room. I was learning to listen to myself again, something I hadn't done in a long time. One day, I ran into an old college friend, Rachel, at a book fair. We hugged tightly. She looked at me with concern and kindness. "Are you okay?" Rachel asked, gently touching my shoulder. I smiled. "I'm healing, slowly, but surely." She nodded. "I knew you'd get through it. You've always been stronger than you think." We sat down at a nearby cafe and talked for hours. We didn't dwell on the past. We focused on the future. Plans, ideas, even travel dreams I had buried in a drawer because I was too busy taking care of people who didn't deserve it. That night, when I got home, I opened my laptop and searched through old emails for a canceled flight to Charleston, a coastal city I once dreamed of visiting. I had canceled that trip 2 years ago, just because Ethan didn't like the sun. Now, there was no one left to stop me. I rebooked the ticket, for one. The flight was scheduled for next Friday. Looking at the confirmation on my screen, I felt something lift from my chest, like I'd just broken free from an invisible chain that had held me back for years. I know I'm still healing. Emotional wounds don't fade after just one summer. But I also know this for certain. I've broken out of the cycle of blind sacrifice. I won't let anyone, not even family, force me into playing the perfect sister ever again. I no longer care where Melissa is, what she's doing, or what version of the story she's telling to gain sympathy. I don't try to explain myself to my parents anymore. They're free to believe whatever they want, but I also have the right to live in my truth. And that truth is, I chose myself. Not out of selfishness, but because I deserve a life with boundaries, with limits, and with peace. The scars are still there, but I've taken back control. No one enters my life anymore without permission. Once a woman who believed in family and marriage, Andrea experienced the deepest betrayal of her life by her own sister and husband. But instead of falling apart, she chose to walk away, set boundaries, and reclaim her peace. Andrea understands now that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is leave toxic relationships, even when they share your blood. From that pain, she rediscovered herself, a stronger, steadier version who knows she is worthy of love. What do you think of Andrea's decision? Was she too harsh, or was it what she needed to protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories to come.